For you created my inmost being. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place, when I was woven together in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed body. All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. Psalm 139. This is the statement that God gives to us. This is what we know about God, that we are made in his image, and he knew us before we were born. You are a child of God, and you exist. And in fact, this is what President Biden says.
I believe I have the rights that I have, not because the government gave them to me, which you believe, but because I'm just a child of God. I exist.
For once, I agree with Biden. You are a child of God and you exist. Therefore, based on the Bible, based on morality, even based on biology, I don't have a right to arbitrarily kill you. Though, in crazy backwards reality that we find ourselves in, this is the conclusion to which the left has arrived. Because you're a child of God and you were born, you now have the godlike power and authority to rule over others and decide whether they live or die. And if, because of some democratic process like, say, a court ruling, this right to arbitrarily kill babies is threatened in any way, all hell must break loose in America and social media, which more and more seems to be the same place. I'm Matt Odegaard, and this is Church Public. Welcome back to Church Public. My name is Matt Odegaard, and I am your host here, where we are trying to help you understand what it means to follow Jesus and what it means to live in the public square, to live in the public, to bring God with you wherever you go, as we were designed to do. We're not meant to be in this weird, segmented, compartmentalized world where you can worship God in your house and maybe in your closet and maybe in your church. If we open the churches for you and if we let you go out and if we agree with what you have to say, but at your workplace, at the market, while you're driving along the road, any place you stop in between, those places you definitely cannot exercise your religion. Or so we're made to think. We're in this really weird place, this really weird moment when, is there still religious freedom? What does religious freedom even look like? What am I really free to do? I'm trying to help you understand what we are looking at and how we explore that. So if this episode helps you, go ahead and like, subscribe. If you want to share it with one of your friends, I really appreciate that because I'm trying to get the word out so that people understand, again, what it means to follow Jesus and live in the public square as we were designed to do. So welcome to Church Public, and I really appreciate you tuning in today. So today we continue on, and we're talking about abortion. And I don't even want to talk about this anymore, but we have to talk about this because this apparently is one of the biggest news stories in the country at the moment. We're talking about this quote-unquote right to choose, and we're talking about the Supreme Court. And all of these things come out of this supposed right to abortion that comes out of Roe v. Wade that supposedly is in the Constitution, which exists somewhere in the Constitution that no one really has able been locate, the penumbras and the rumblings, and it comes forth from the Constitution when you really stare at it and you light a candle and you focus and you meditate, then it comes out of the Constitution. I jest a little bit, but this is ultimately what the decision has come to. Again, I'll go and check the Constitution for this right to choose and this right to abortion. I'll wait. Yeah, it's not there. So, even if it's not there, it must be protected at all costs. So we get to where we are today, where, just to catch everybody up, if you haven't been listening to all of the craziness that's been coming out, you have a court case, Supreme Court case, Mississippi versus Dobbs. This case is ruling on a 15-week abortion ban in Mississippi. Does the state of Mississippi have the right to say, after 15 weeks, you cannot have an abortion? That's what this whole case is about. And while the Supreme Court was looking at this, they looked at Roe versus Wade because Roe versus Wade also creates an arbitrary right to life based on the existence outside of the womb and the age of viability, whatever that is, or whatever it was in 1973, which also was kind of amended by Planned Parenthood versus Casey in the 90s because ultimately they realized that Roe v. Wade didn't really make sense. And Planned Parenthood versus Casey also doesn't really make sense. So the Supreme Court has been ruling on this Mississippi versus Dobbs case, and a version of their verdict on this case, as it were, right? A decision on this case has been released. It's just a version. It hasn't really been decided. But even though it hasn't been decided, everyone is going crazy and everyone is figuring out, like, is this real? The Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, John Roberts, said, yes, it is real. It's just not yet decided. But it seems that 5 of the justices, not including Justice Roberts, are leaning this direction. He may choose He may not. He's been a little wish-washy in other things. We'll see what comes out of that. But everybody's going crazy. They're burning pregnancy centers down. Yes, that's really a thing. We'll look at that in a moment. And they're showing up at the Supreme Court justices' houses at their homes with their kids there to protest this case that hasn't actually been decided yet. And you have the President of the United States talking about how you shouldn't be able to tell anyone if you can abort a child or something like that.
The idea that we're going to make a judgment that is going to say that no one can make the judgment to choose to abort a child based on a decision by the Supreme Court, I think goes way overboard.
This is about a lot more than abortion. I hadn't read the whole opinion at that time. But this reminds me of the debate with Robert Bork. Bork believed the only reason you had any inherent rights was because the government gave them to you. If you go back and look at the opening comments of the Bork-Biden when I was questioning him as chairman, I said, I believe I have the rights that I have, not because the government gave them to me, which you believe, but because I'm just a child of God. I exist. I delegated by joining this union here to delegate some obligation, some rights I have to the governments for social good.
So it's important to note that he is talking about this Bork case, and I'm not going to get all into that exchange. It doesn't really matter that much. But what matters is what he's talking about, because he says, "I believe the rights I have not because the government gave them to me," which you believe, talking about Bork and some others that he's referring to. Who knows who he's really talking to in this instance? But because he says, "I'm a child of God," and he says, "I exist." Now, I completely agree with this. I think he is a child of God. I think you are a child of God. And I think you exist because of God. Period. It's just the conclusion that goes off the rails for me. My conclusion, based on being a child of God and existing, is that you don't have the right to murder me, and vice versa. Because you are a child of God and because you exist, I don't have the right to murder you. And I think that goes from cradle to grave. I think that as soon as you're conceived, I don't have the right to murder you. Even up until you're 99 and you're in a home or you're in a coma, I don't have the right to murder you. It's not my place. It's not my place to play God and choose that you should die, whether you're old and in a coma or you have dementia and you don't know which way is up. It's not my right to kill you. Even if you ask me to, I won't do that because it's not my job to play God and kill you. Same goes for being in a womb. It doesn't matter if you're just conceived. It doesn't matter if you're 9 months or 7 days after being born, as in California and the new bill that they're proposing. I don't have the right to kill you, even if you're not autonomous, even if you don't have the ability to exist on your own and need machines to do it. It's not my job to be able to kill you. Their conclusion is, as a child of God, because I now have full authority over all creation, apparently I deserve to murder you. If there ever was a more theocratic assertion, I have not heard it. Theocratic, in other words, like judging to be God, judging by the power of God. This seems like the biggest thing that they accuse Christians of constantly doing, that I believe in God, therefore my way or the highway, God reigns, so I'm going to smite or smote all of you, right? That's what we're accused of doing constantly. But this is what Joe Biden seems to be making this claim. And what all these people seem to be making the claim about. Because I am alive, therefore I am God, and I have more power than someone who is not autonomous and can't, deal with life themselves, whether they're in a womb or on a machine or at the end of their life. Therefore, I have the right to end theirs. I can't comprehend how this is the conclusion that to get to, especially if you say something like, I believe in God, and I am a child of God, and I'm following after God. How in the world is the conclusion then, I'm like God, therefore I now have the power to end your life? This is that theocratic thing that we're always accused of, that, it's a threat to democracy, but hey, you're doing it. You're saying because you exist, you get to kill people. I'm saying because people exist, you don't get to kill people. And because of this, the media has gone completely crazy. Here's just a couple examples from Media Matters of the media just going crazy.
All right. Again, I'm just sort of composing myself here as I process this.
Honestly, I want to cry.
First of all, it's going to be very hard for me today because my blood pressure is so high.
I want to cry in so many different ways.
I also feel my blood pressure ticking up by the minute.
I couldn't go back to sleep.
Yeah.
It's that devastating.
This is a Category 5 hurricane.
This is really an upending of the rights of women in American society.
Women who are poor, women who are women of color, they will be forced to have pregnancies that they cannot afford to terminate, and pregnancies that will then turn into children.
Next, they'll go after gay marriage and maybe the board, what is it, Brown versus Board of Education?
Yeah, gay marriage, maybe even interracial marriage.
The court will surely suffer for this shattering self-own to its own legitimacy.
What did you think was going to happen in 2004 when they replaced Sandra Day O'Connor?
I hope there will be a national uprising.
What did you think was going to happen when Mitch McConnell stole the Supreme Court seat?
There is some connection between an effort to overturn an election and an effort to overturn Roe.
The founding fathers didn't recognize abortion as a fundamental right because the founding fathers were racist, misogynist jerk faces who didn't believe that women had any rights.
I'm sorry, jerk faces is funny. Anyway, yeah. So man, there's so much feels, so much emotion happening, and I mean a couple of the things in there that you heard. Like maybe you heard the person who said they are forcing women that are pregnant, not to get pregnant, but women that are pregnant to give birth and eventually have a child, as if this was some miracle of biology that when you're pregnant you have a child. I don't even know what to say. Like I guess nobody went to 6th grade biology. At any rate. And then they take this leap. I have to highlight this leap because this is just kind of interesting to me that they take this leap from ending baby killing at a federal level. And again, just to be clear, that's not ending abortion at a state level. There will be many states, California, New York, etc., that continue doing abortions through the point of birth and beyond. With no limits whatsoever, and corporations and companies that pay for you to go, we're going to talk about a couple of those in a moment, to go and get an abortion in some of these states that will do it. We're just talking about ending it at a federal level by ending Roe versus Wade and then allowing states and governments and governors to make their own decisions based on the state. But it's interesting that they then make the leap of ending abortion at a federal level to ending interracial marriage. And listen, I'm just going to put this picture up. I don't know where to go from here, people. I mean, the leaps of the end of the world in this no longer having a right to kill babies is just so crazy. But I found this clip, and this clip it's very emotional. There's a brief language warning. I apologize for that, but this is her expressing her frustration. I guess this is Anna Kasparian from the Young Turks, I believe, and I think she actually makes the case for abortion and against the Bible and God and Christianity. I actually think she makes the case fairly well. I don't think the case holds up, but I think she makes the case very well. So I'm going to let you listen to this, and then we'll talk about it a little bit. So this is Anna Kasparian talking about why she's upset.
These comments might be strong, but it's how I genuinely feel. I don't care that you're a Christian. I don't care what the Bible says. Like, I feel like it's a clown show, like sitting here trying to decipher what your little mythical book has to say about these very real political issues, right? I don't care if you're Christian. In fact, I will fight for you to have your religious liberty and practice your Christianity. I believe in that. I don't believe in Christianity, which means that you do not get to dictate the way I live my life based on your religion. I don't care what the Bible says. You have every right in the world. All those women who identify with your religion have every right in the world to not get an abortion, to not take birth control, but they do not have the right to dictate my life and what I decide to do with my body. I don't care about your goddamn religion. I'm so tired of having nonstop conversations about what the Bible says. You live your life in the way that you interpret the Bible. Again, I don't care, but you don't get to take the Bible and tell me, well, the Bible says this in this chapter, in this verse. I don't care. I don't care. I don't believe in it. And I have the right, based on our Constitution, to not believe in it. So, a few things going on here. Obviously, there's a lot of emotion, and I apologize for the language there, but we had to feel the emotion, and I think you feel the emotion. And we hear a lot.
She doesn't care. And I think this is where a lot of people are. You don't care. You don't care if I'm a Christian. You don't care if I read this Bible and believe it and follow it. You don't care that I love Jesus and I follow what Jesus says and actually believe that he is the Lord of heaven and earth currently. And you say I can have religious liberty and I can practice my religion. And she even says, I will fight for you to have the freedom to practice your religion, which is a nice saying. Then in the next breath, or maybe even the same breath, because I'm not sure she was breathing during this, but she says, but your religion can't tell me what to do, which is a little bit ironic, and we'll get back to that in a moment. She says, I don't care what the Bible says, and I don't believe it. And she says, at the end, I have the right to not believe it based on the Constitution. So I just need to talk about this a little bit because there's a lot going on here, and some of you probably picked up on it, but it's important to understand that this is where a lot of people are arguing from. And so you have to understand where, and there's a lot of heart, there's a lot of feeling. I understand that there's a lot of emotion. I feel the emotion coming from a lot of people on this issue. You can call the Bible mythical. You can choose to not believe it. That's fine. That's your freedom. You can rant, you can cry, you can scream, you can have all of your feelings. You can not care. And you can have these feelings about what you want to do with your body. And really, you have the freedom to do what you want to do with your body. You can cut your finger off. You can cut your foot off. You can cut your leg off. Really, I don't care. While I don't think that's a good idea, I'm not going to stop you. And really, I'm not sure many people at all would try to stop you. That is not what we're arguing about. That's the problem here. We're not arguing about your body. As simply as I can put this, another human is not your body. That's why we started with Biden. That's why we started with you have a right to life because you are fearfully and wonderfully made, because you are a child of God based on who you are. A baby is no different. A baby is also a child of God. So this big emotional argument about what you can do with your body, I'm not arguing with that. We're arguing at a different place. I'm not arguing you can't do whatever you want to your body. Again, cut off your fingers or your toes or your nose, your ears. It's weird, but it doesn't really matter to me. We can have a conversation about why I don't think that's a good idea, but I'm not going to stop you from doing that. Well, maybe I actually might try to stop you from doing that because I don't think that's a good idea at all. But we're not arguing about your body. We're arguing about the body of a baby, regardless of whether they were just conceived in that moment or whether they're 15 weeks old or 24 weeks old or 9 months old or 9 months plus 7 days out of the womb old. In California, you can choose not to believe the Bible. You can choose to live a godless and selfish life and do what you want. However, our society is actually based on moral laws that both now Joe Biden and I would say are given by God and protected, enshrined by the Constitution, enumerated by the Constitution, if you want to use a big word, which this person even points to as an authority, which incidentally, the Constitution protects innocent human lives. You know that whole life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, or property, or prosperity, depending on which version of Jefferson that you're reading. You know, life, that thing that you need to have any other right. Life, that thing that precedes all other rights, because if you're not alive, you can't have any other rights. But this is where we are as a society. We've been entranced by this really alluring idea that bodily autonomy is the only goal and consent is the only virtue. And this illusion, and it is an illusion, that while a baby is in utero, it's not a baby. It's an illusion. It's not real. A baby, regardless of being in utero or not, is a baby. And as an aside, as a tangent, I've heard countless clips who are arguing that, well, the unborn baby is not a baby, it's a fetus, as if that makes it less of a baby. And by the way, did you know that fetus is Latin for unborn baby? Apparently, neither did any of those using the argument, but that's a side point. What is the argument? The argument is really about rape and incest and all the safe and legal and rare occurrence a woman needs to have to save themselves, right? Or at least that's what we've been told. Or is this argument about abortion as birth control so that you can have all the unprotected sex you want to with no consequences to you? That's the question. What is the argument we're talking about? We're not talking about your body. We're talking about the baby. We're not talking about the ability to murder outside the womb, unless you're in California. We're talking about where is a baby, and when does a baby become a baby? Does a baby become a baby at conception, as I would say, or does a baby become a baby at 15 weeks or 24 weeks? What is the magical point when a baby transforms from this mystical clump of cells or fetus, which means unborn baby, into a magical baby. Because again, in California, they've just put a bill in the books that 7 days after the baby is born, it's still not a baby and you can still have an abortion. So what is the limit here? What is the limiting principle? And I have not gotten a good answer. And in fact, even Jen Psaki answering a question about these limits can't give a good answer.
The president's position on choice has evolved over time, so just checking for his official position. Does he support any limits on abortion right now?
Peter, the president has spoken, has talked about his position many times. He supports the right of a woman to make choices about her own body with her doctor.
But I know that one of the Democrats that he endorsed and who won their primary this week, Tim Ryan, said yesterday that he does not support any limits on abortion. Is that where the president's thinking is now?
The president has stated his view many times.
So does the president support abortion up until the moment of birth?
The president has spoken about this many times, Peter, and I would refer you to his own comments about abortion and a woman's right to choose and make decisions about her body with her doctor, which is what any of those women would do.
So there we are. I mean, the non-answer, I don't know if you heard that. The question is, where is the point? Is the point conception, as the Catholic Church believes, and Joe Biden, a staunch Catholic, Nancy Pelosi, a staunch Catholic, who say they're Catholic and believe the Catholic things, except for on this issue where Catholic Church and all the church and the scripture that I just read from you that's older than the Christian church from Psalms all say that life begins at conception, or even in this case, God knew you before you were formed, before you were in your mother's womb. That's another theological debate that we can have at a later time. But even if you just count basic biology, any middle school textbook again, where life begins at conception, and you're a human when you're conceived because you're not an elephant or a plant. I mean, if you're a human and you have human DNA and chromosomes, etc., you're a human. So life begins at conception. But then the question is, well, does it? Or does it begin at 15 weeks or 24 weeks or 37 weeks or 9 months and 7 days or 10 months? Like, where's the arbitrary line that we're drawing? And why are we drawing an arbitrary line there? And that is really the crux of the case that the Supreme Court is looking at in this 15-week abortion ban through Mississippi, and then going backwards into Planned Parenthood versus Casey and Roe v. Wade. If there's no reason to have an arbitrary decision, and we should protect life, whether that's life in the womb, out of the womb, at like right before the tomb, like do we protect people at any stage and any position, or do we just arbitrarily choose if someone has been on life support or in a coma for say 9 months, like a baby would be in the womb? Is that the time when you pull the plug because they're no longer quote unquote alive according to our now reverse biology? None of this makes any sense biologically if we're going by those arguments. So Peter Doocy asks Jen Psaki, hey, is Biden going to weigh on this? Like, does he support abortion all the way till birth or somewhere thereabouts? And apparently the answer is yes, because the easy answer could have been no. He agrees with the 15. He agrees with the 24. He agrees that life begins at conception, which of course he can't say because he's full on abortion at this point. And that is what we see. We see that this is the argument. And I've heard people argue, well, it's just safe, legal, and rare. It's only in these extreme circumstances of incest and rape. It's only in these really hard and terrible times. And the reality, statistically or whatever, that's a percentage of a percentage, like 0.0 something percent are those instances. And 90 something percent are people just choosing, well, I wanted to do it, so I had an abortion. 90 something percent. I mean, really, it's like high 80s, 90s. It's not this safe, legal, and rare thing. It's just people choosing that's what they want to do. And companies are getting in line behind this. You have companies like, what's the latest? Amazon is a company that just became the latest corporation. They will give you $4,000 per year in travel expenses annually. So every year, per year, you can go and have an abortion in another state if the state that you're in does not allow abortion. They'll just pay for you to go. You've got Citigroup, Yelp, Uber, Lyft, Bumble, Match, Salesforce, Levi Strauss. There's a whole bunch of different companies, and that list is growing every day, that will pay for your abortion. And before you say, oh, that's really nice of those companies, just think about this from the dreaded, I'm using scare quotes if you can't see, the dreaded capitalist perspective, right? Because capitalism is evil in the eyes of the socialist enterprise, right? Do you think that companies want to pay maternity leave? Do you think that companies want to pay for people to go and have a baby and be gone for, I mean, the maternity leave keeps getting longer. Now there's paternity leave where the dad who, I mean, let's be honest, dads are important, but they didn't do a lot in the delivery process. They can stay home for sometimes months in some of these companies. Do you think that a company wants to pay a mom or a dad to stay home for no reason? Or would they rather pay a little bit now so that their worker doesn't have to work? I mean, this is ultimate capitalism, and people are celebrating how free and how amazing and progressive it is that a company will pay you to work and pay you to not have to be gone for work. Like, does no one else see this? Of course a company's going to pay for you to have an abortion. They just want you as a little widget in their factory to keep doing whatever it is you do in your widgety world. And you just sit there and plug in your numbers and then, oh no, I'm pregnant, so I'm going to be gone for, who knows, 9 months, a year. You're going to have to pay for me. Oh no, you can just go and get this taken care of. And now you'll be back in the office and just keep doing your widgety work. Of course, that's what a company is going to do. And you'll see a lot of companies are going to sign up for this because these guys are doing the math in their head going like, if we pay $2,000 here, $4,000 here, we're saving $10, $20, $50,000, maybe more, right? Of course they're going to do this. This is a math equation, and they don't care about you. They don't care about you. They don't care about your baby. They don't care about your family. All they care about is for you to work there. I think this is the crony capitalism. I think it's the evil side of capitalism, when capitalism is too ensconced with greed to see people as the value that they have. I think capitalism is the best system that's ever been created to grow wealth for an entire civilization. But when it's gone to its extremes of greed, like this clearly is, this is what you get, where they don't care about you. They do slave labor. You're essentially slave labor. They just want to kill your baby so that you can come back and be more slave labor. I mean, this seems so obvious to me. I don't know why people can't see this. And Fox, which is Fox, and I get that, but they did a poll, and they did use some liberal outlets to do this poll, and they did a survey of a majority of Americans, and the majority of Americans say they want some kind of restrictions. According to this poll, most Americans believe abortion should be either mostly or always illegal and support banning abortion after 15 weeks. This national poll was actually conducted prior to the Supreme Court leak. So do you hear what's happening here? The majority of Americans want abortion banned after 15 weeks. The whole Supreme Court, we started with this, about Mississippi versus Dobbs, is over 15 weeks. So the majority of Americans support this Mississippi versus Dobbs, but what they don't understand is you cannot conclude this Supreme Court hearing on Mississippi versus Dobbs without looking at Roe and saying, well, then it seems like Roe is sort of made up. And that's a problem, because if you're going to rule consistently, which should be the goal of a democratic process and a judicial process is consistent ruling, then these consistent rulings should be consistent, right? I mean, like, this should be common sense. But again, sometimes we have to lay out common sense that if you rule in a court case, the rest of the court cases need to be in line with this. This is what should make sense to everybody, but clearly it doesn't, which leads us to protests all over America with all manner of graphic content that honestly I can't even show or play most of it here. There was one that went viral yesterday, which was gross and terrible, where a person who was kind of mostly naked, they were pulling fake babies out of a shirt and pretending to murder them. And this went viral. And it was gross and disgusting. And people were chanting and making the weird demony screamy sounds. I mean, this is it. And this is a lot of gross protests and things that were happening. And I mentioned before, protests are in front of some of the justices' house. Chief Justice John Roberts had protests in front of his house, even though he was not listed among the 5 justices who were in support of this decision. There were protests in front of Brett Kavanaugh's house. There was not protests in front of Samuel Alito's house, only because he was in so much danger, according to social media and some other sources, that they moved his family to a safe location that no one knew where he was, because social media doxed. That means they published the addresses of all these Supreme Court justices so that people could go and stand in front of them. And I'm not even going to play for you the clip where Jen Psaki was asked, hey, do you think it's okay that people published the addresses of Supreme Court justices and are going there to protest them? And she said, well, we can peacefully protest, right? Is there a difference in between standing in front of a courthouse that is secured and doesn't have people in it and somebody's actual house with children and family in there? I think there is. And again, most people should agree, like, hey, threatening a family and their children shouldn't be what we do. This tolerant left, they're super kind and gentle and peaceful protesters, and they can't kill their children, so I guess they want to kill yours. I don't know where this goes. Like, it's the most wacky thing, and it's nonsensical, and it's really sad and demoralizing to watch. And in addition, some really nice peaceful protesters burned out a pregnancy clinic in Wisconsin over the weekend. While this is not surprising, it is disturbing. Why is it disturbing? Because the activists that are arguing for the right to kill babies are now mad that they may not be able to kill babies. So they believe that not being able to kill their baby actually kills the mother. I'm not sure how that math works, but somehow that works. If you're pregnant and you can't kill your baby, then you just die because you have a baby, which doesn't, I mean, moms have been giving birth, women have been giving birth for all of time, and sometimes it's bad, but a lot of times it's not. Anyway, it doesn't really make sense to me, but so they're mad because not killing your baby kills the mother. So in response to that, the response is, I'll just kill you instead. I guess. Or maybe we just kill everyone at this point, just to be fair. I don't know. I don't know where this is going, because you protest and threaten the justice's children. You protest and threaten. I mean, it's fortunate that they did this at the clinic over the weekend, but what if they had done it while people were there, or pregnant moms were there, or the workers were there and had burned them or killed them? Does that even out these whatever justice scales that we're looking at? Because I can't kill my baby, so I'm just going to kill you, and now that's fair? Like, this, we have literally gone off the cliff on this, and so I'm just going to bring this. I'm going to bring this back in and try to figure this out, because I want to end where we began. It starts with the right premise. I have rights because I am a child of God. And in fact, I'll even go back to the beginning at the Declaration of Independence. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. The first one is life. I'm going to even stop there. You can go and read the rest, but life. You have a right to life, whether you're in the womb or almost to the tomb, right? You have a right to life, and you should have that right to life. But we are now fighting and saying that in the Constitution, there is the right to kill people who we don't like or want in our society, I guess. Even political scientist David S. Lutz did an extensive survey of the American political literature from 1760 to 1805. He reported that the Bible was cited more frequently than any European writer or any European school of thought. This is from his article, such as Enlightenment liberalism. I've talked about that before. I'm not going to get into what Enlightenment liberalism means, but what we're comparing here is, did the founders think that the Bible was more important, or all of these theories were more important? Approximately 1/3 of all citations in the literature from the founding fathers was from the Bible. The book of Deuteronomy alone was the most frequently cited work. Remember Deuteronomy, like the laws and all that? Anyway, and that was followed, Deuteronomy was followed by Montesquieu's Spirit of the Laws, which is, again, an Enlightenment liberalist writer, philosopher. And in fact, Deuteronomy was referenced nearly twice as often as John Locke's writings, which is another philosopher that a lot of the Constitution and Declaration were based on. But the Apostle Paul was mentioned about as frequently as Montesquieu was mentioned. What does this all mean? What this means is the founders knew that this society had to be based on the Bible. Joe Biden starts with the premise that our foundation, our morality, has to be based on the Bible, that we are children of God and we exist because of God, and the government exists to protect those rights. The government doesn't create rights. The Constitution doesn't create rights out of whole cloth. The Constitution, the government, enshrine the rights that we already have from God. The founders knew this. Apparently, at some level, Joe Biden knows this, so he has the right premise. He just comes to the wrong conclusion. Biden and I say our rights, our value, our worth as humans comes from God. His conclusion is, therefore, because we have rights, we have value, that we should be able to kill babies whenever we want to and murder people in the womb because we exist and so we have life, but we get to decide if you have life. My conclusion, and many on the pro-life side, is vastly different. The conclusion should be, because we have life, because men and women and babies are created in God's image, and because they have value, even if you don't agree, and even if you don't believe in God, and if you point to the Constitution, you must acknowledge that our founders wrote this and fought and died for us to have life. Because we have life, and that comes from God, our right is to have life. I mean, again, this shouldn't be controversial. It shouldn't be hard to argue. It shouldn't be misunderstanding. But you have this lady who espouses the position very well that we should not be able to tell her what to do with her body. And I agree. And that's fine. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the poor baby who got created out of no fault of their own, regardless of how they got created. And we're saying that now there's some arbitrary time when their life begins. Conception, 15 weeks, 24 weeks, birth, 7 days after birth in California. God says he knew you in your mother's womb, Psalm 139, as we started with. Biology even says life begins at conception. Every middle school biology textbook, if you want a reference on that, just open up your child's middle school biology textbook. Biology says life begins at conception in every mammalian species, not to mention human. And a baby is a baby inside of the womb. To argue that is otherwise is just a lie. A baby inside the womb is a baby outside the womb is a baby. So a pro-choice believer, if you are a pro-choice believer, why don't you just be honest? You would choose, you'd rather choose to kill someone than lose your independence. And that's what we're hearing. We're hearing that these believers really believe they are the center of the universe and their life is more valuable than anybody else's life, especially than their baby's life. So it's their right. Apparently, they believe God-given. I'm going to have to say little g God-given. So they're able to kill whomever they want to kill. For me, for those who really follow God, a human life is vastly more valuable than that. So this is what we fight for. The right to live, the right to life, regardless of the circumstances of conception, however illicit that is. That action is now completed. Now we're talking about another human. Even in Biden's words, a child. Can you kill a child just because you want to, or can you not? We have many laws on the books after birth that you cannot kill a child just because you want to. And I agree with those laws. Why does it not make sense to have laws in the books that say you cannot kill a child before they're born? Are they less of a child? The left would argue yes, but it just doesn't make sense to me. None of those arguments seem to hold up for me. There's more to come on this, I'm sure, as this case progresses and the progressives continue to melt down into ancient pagan ritualistic death cult sacrifices, but hopefully less of those. For Church Public, I'm Matt Odegaard, and keep the faith.